Hi everyone and welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today I have with me Jhana Lee. Now Jhana Lee is dialing in from Salt Lake City, which we know is basically the city of Mormons, and it's a great city. I've been there before, and Mormons are great people, and they're also the perfect entrepreneurs. And that's why Jhana Lee is in Salt Lake City, because it is the beating heart of startups, because the Mormons are really good at startups and entrepreneurship, and they're really good at selling. So Jhana is the CEO of Spyglass Ops. She's an operations coach, and a lot of entrepreneurs think operations are boring, but they're very necessary. And the quote I like to use on this topic is, not only fall in love with what you do, but the process of what you do. And so she's a coach and consultant for online startups. She specializes in helping founders scale their business while scaling themselves out of the day-to-day weeds. She says the key is recognize they are not the best person to fix their own ops bottlenecks, and I would agree with that, because I hate detail, and Jhana is very good at detail, I'm sure, and instead leverage an operator to scale their systems and team. Though operations is totally the black sheep of the business family, but needs to be loved, Jhana is the diehard nerd for it and loves making it fun and engaging so entrepreneurs can benefit from the true value of black ops operations for businesses.
I love that.
Thanks, Jhana. It's fantastic to have you here. And let's have a chat about operations, process, systems, so entrepreneurs can get their life back.
I love it. Let's do it, Jeff. Let's dive in.
Okay. So, Jhana, for me, operations and process, I started out being an accountant, trained to be an accountant.
Okay.
And I quickly realized that I was not wired to be an accountant. My brother was, but not me, because I hated the detail. I was quite good at numbers, but just hated the detail and processes and systems. So it did my head and heart in. So let me ask you this question. Why do you love detail? Why do you love operations? Where did that come from? Because I don't think you're trained as an accountant. No. So where did this come from? This urge to be basically guru of operations for businesses and startups?
It's an excellent question. I have looked at this really closely because part of our job is to help our clients identify whether they have the right operator and what is it that makes for an amazing operator. And as I've looked at this question, what I've realized is that every amazing operator I have ever met has the same underlying worldview and lens. They have the same way of processing data. I call it level 3 thinking. It is essentially a way of complex systems analysis where it doesn't matter what I'm looking at, a business, a family Thanksgiving dinner, climate change, it doesn't matter. Any set of data that I am getting, I am immediately processing it through systems and pattern analysis. I am breaking it down into all of its various parts, seeing how those parts fit together, and identifying gaps and identifying leverage points. Every operator that I know thinks about business in that way. They may not even know that that's what they are doing, but that is what they are doing. It is a unique lens. And so what I have grown to believe, Jeff, is that operations, what we call operations, is just, it's a set of skills. It's a set of tactical knowledge, right? These things can be taught. That's what we do. We coach operators, right? We can teach these things. But that underlying lens, you either have it or you don't. And 99% of the visionary founders I know do not have it, which is brilliant because they have their own unique genius, right? They're busy wearing the visionary founder lens, which is also totally necessary and hugely beneficial to the business. But it is a lens that does not set them up well when it comes to identifying details, identifying gaps, seeing how the systems fit together and how they could fit together better and more efficiently. And this is why I advocate for the fact that I don't think the founder is generally the best person to scale their own operations, because they're bringing a fundamentally different lens to the business. If they can find the operator with that level 3 thinking, that person is naturally gifted at doing all of the work that the visionary does not want to touch and does not want to look at, and doing a much better job of that way more effectively, way more efficiently, and probably cheaper.
So when did you realize that this is one of your superpowers?
I stumbled into operations. Most operators I know do. We have showed up this way to everything we've ever done in our lives. And we just found our way into this weird sweet spot within businesses where systems make a lot of sense to us. SOPs and process make a lot of sense to us. And so for me, that I like to say that before I found operations, I was quite literally directionless. I was living in a converted van full time, driving through North and South America with my boyfriend at the time. He was scaling a business. He was the CEO. And I was, weighing in, talking things through, answering questions, bouncing things off of him. And it became very clear to me of like, why am I seeing all these gaps in your business that you're not seeing at all? One thing led to another. I ended up becoming that company COO because once I got in there, it was just obvious to me where there was room for improvement. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just went to work on it. And then much later, I learned that there's a word for that. That word is operations. And that set me down my current path.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're accidental operations.
And most operators I know would tell a similar story, right? There's no operations isn't sexy. No one's out there being like, here's why a career in operations is the coolest thing you could ever do, right? There's not a lot of resources out there. There's not a lot of training. There's not a lot of spotlighting for operations, why it's a superpower. And so that is something that is part of the mission of my business, is really to help put operations on the map so other operators can self-identify that this is their secret genius and they can take ownership for that and bring it to the business in a bigger way.
Yeah, so it's not taught at high school and it's not generally taught at university or college either, is it?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. It's like entrepreneurship, right? But there are way more resources, I think, out there for entrepreneurs, right? Masterminds and coaching communities and thought leaders and books and all these things. Operations isn't sexy. We said it, right? It's the black sheep. So when something like that isn't well understood and those people aren't well supported, they aren't able to bring their best value to a business. And that ultimately harms everyone, including the CEO founder.
Yep.
Yeah.
So so basically discovered via a boyfriend on a road trip.
Yes. Yep, pretty much on a 2.5-year long road trip. Yes.
Okay. So tell us a bit about the road trip. I'm interested because this is I've just read a message from 𝓵𝓮𝓪𝓻, who's a good friend of mine, been living in the Valley for a long time, Silicon Valley area, just outside San Francisco. He's just sold everything and gone to do live in another country scenario. He's in Lisbon, and he's just said, basically loving settling in, enjoying the experience, but my routine's gone to shit.
Yes.
So what I've discovered too, and I've done a little bit of digital nomad, and what I discovered is that continuing to move screws up your routine, screws up processes and systems, and it becomes more and more important that you have a back office team leader that looks after operations and systems so they can do the heavy lifting and you can do the inspiration and strategy and basically be the choir, leader, right? So I digress, but essentially, how did you go the 2.5 years traveling in a van through America, United States? What was that? Just to have a bit of fun, exploring mountains, going hiking? Did you go to Yosemite, which is one of my favorite places? Tell us about the trip. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so we went as far north as like Banff and Jasper, Canada, and as far south as northern Patagonia in Chile. So we were through the entire Western Hemisphere. Oh, yes. Yeah. And I learned a lot, as you can imagine. I did not speak Spanish, really, when I started this trip. I had no idea where we were going. There was no route. There was no plan. I just knew I really loved South America. I'd done some traveling there before, and I knew that I had a picture of my life and a chapter of my life planned out where I wanted to spend more time in that region. And so when the opportunity came up to move into this van, I said, yes, I will move into a van with you, but only if we go to South America. And so we did. It was chaos, totally, right? Like take all of the chaos that comes from being a digital nomad and then 10x that, because every single day you're trying to figure out, where do we sleep? Where do we get our water? Where do we, have enough Wi-Fi to make this call?
Exactly.
Total chaos. In the context of also then trying to scale and run a business together, that is a pressure cooker situation. And I learned a lot from it. But what it really emphasized for me, right, was the importance of operations. There were large chunks of the day when the CEO and COO of the business were literally offline, cannot reach us, in like moving from point A to point B, have no service in South America. Who knows what's going on and who knows when we'll arrive? Can the team continue to thrive? Can the team continue to function, right? So it was a beautiful forcing agent within the business that said, if the leadership is going to have this level of flexibility, what is the foundation and the infrastructure that needs to be in place so the business can continue to be okay. And I see so many entrepreneurs, because they can put themselves at the center of their companies, where effectively nothing can or does move forward without them, because they're always online. They're always present. They're willing to work 14-hour days. They're willing to work every weekend. They're willing to hop on calls with every client, right? Because you're available, you make yourself available, and you build a business around yourself that is dependent on you being available. And then those same people turn around and be like, wait, I started my business because I wanted freedom. I wanted flexibility. I had a vision maybe of doing the digital nomad thing, but now I can't feel like I could turn off my computer for a day and be able to step away. What happened there, right? So the very first example of business and operations, I think, was a very extreme one in my case, but that really set me up to learn, how do we scale a company, not just so that it is healthy and able to grow and sustainable, but how to do it in such a way where the CEO is not a limiting bottleneck within that operation.
So it's very good to have that. And I think for me that, and I even think I'm trying to think, it was Steven Spielberg said, you can, even as a movie producer, as a creator, he said that, and here's the one I think said the quote, he might have stolen it from someone else because all these quotes get lost in the noise of time. And he said, you got to not only love what you do, but you love the journey and process of what you do. In other words, for him is the whole journey of taking an idea, a film script, and turning into a movie, including promotion and everything else. And I went, wow, that's really cool. So, and if you're not good at it, you need to hire people who are good at it.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about, so when you engage a client, they're basically losing all their hair, or they're basically ready to jump off a cliff because they're frustrated. And so tell us a little bit about the process you take people through, because we're going to break this down into a process. What's the steps that you take your clients through?
Yes. So before I jump into that, a thought that sparked for me as you were speaking about that Spielberg quote. I always say that, if running your business is like sliding down a slip and slide. I don't know if you have slip and slides in Australia, but like
slippery dips, we call them slippery dips.
Slippery dips. I love it. Okay. So if running your business is like going down a slippery dip, operations is like pouring water in soap. Either way, you're going for a ride. Either way, there's going to be ups and downs. It's going to be a little bit bumpy. But how fast are you able to go? How frictionless is the ride? And how much do you enjoy the journey, right? What you just said, like enjoying the process of getting to where you're trying to go. I've seen entrepreneurs be able to absolutely like brute force strength their way to success, to growth. But every day they are miserable. Every day they feel trapped by their business. And so, you can grow a business that way. But why would you, if the purpose is to enjoy the ride? And operations is one of the key unlocks when it comes to being able to show up to your business in the way that you specifically enjoy, are gifted at, and ultimately drive the most value and help your business grow as quickly as possible.
Yep.
So you asked about our process. To help our clients do that, we generally start with our clients on what we call our OptInspection, which is a company-wide audit. And the very first step of that audit is to sit down with the founder and ask them, what do you want? Yes, for the business. What are your financial targets? What are your growth goals, your impact goals? Like, where do you want this business to grow? And what do you want for yourself? What is the relationship you want to have with this business? How flexible and how many hours do you want to work each week? What hats do you want to be wearing in your company and do you enjoy wearing? And what hats do you wish you could take off your head tomorrow? Tell us about your business and your ideal business, but also tell us about the relationship you want to have with that business. And then we will go away for the rest of this week and reverse engineer the systems and the team and the game plan that will be required to get you both. We're not just going to grow your business for the sake of growing it and build a bigger cage. We're going to grow the business in the way that allows you to step into your zone of genius, enjoy and fall back in love with the process of running your business because you're doing the things that you genuinely love doing.
Yep, exactly. And for me, the team I've got now are just fantastic, and because I love to write, so and I do love. I'm sort of very addicted to the future trends. Where's the technology industry going? Where's the world going? Where am I going? But for me, I've seen my job also with the team is if I see an obstacle for them getting their job done, my job as CEO founder to go, I've got to put this in place so I make their job easy. In other words, if basically my job is to support the team because then I'll support the customer.
Yeah. Totally.
and the business. So it's basically I've got to, and other thing I've learned too is I end up with a lot of ideas. And if I just keep dumping ideas on the team, they get very confused. And because you're one paying the bills, they're going, well, that's important. I need to do that. And end up you just bouncing around.
Yes.
So you've got to be clear that, okay, make sure you've got less is more. You've got to make sure that you're not giving too many ideas to the team, and also just get out of the way and let them do it. But yeah, it's really, really good. I've learned a lot over the last few years. And that's why Alexandra Watkins, a dear friend of mine, I've known for 7 years, helped to launch a book. She's a genius at creating names for business. Alexandra, if you ever, go and read a book, guys, if you ever get to, have some time.
Shout out, Alexandra.
Yeah. But yeah, so very much understand that operations and processes and systems are absolutely essential if you want to get your life back.
Yeah.
And also to a scale your business. All right.
Well, and I would, if you don't mind, Jeff, double click on something you just said, which is one of the things you've learned is essentially how to not whiplash your team, right? This is a really important thing. In my mind, that is an operational issue, right? A well-trained, well-qualified operator needs to recognize that their visionary is like an idea generation machine. That is their genius. That is absolutely necessary within the business, right? And how do we invite those ideas as an asset? How do we invite them into the business in a way that doesn't cause whiplash or demotivation or burnout, right? That's an operational system that can be put in place. That's infrastructure that can be put in place around the CEO so that they're able to live in their zone of genius, do what they do best, but bring those ideas essentially through a filter in such a way that they won't have negative repercussions on the rest of the business. So the job of operations at the end of the day, I define it as any action required in a business to optimize a company's ROI on its time, energy, money, and human potential. The CEO is the most valuable resource to be optimized for in that whole business. The CEO's time, the CEO's energy. Are you doing the things that light you up or drain you? The money that the business is creating, the CEO is pouring into it, and the human potential. Is the CEO lit up, engaged, excited, doing their best work every day? If so, they're going to drive the business forward massively. If the CEO is having to show up and spend all of their time and energy doing low value, reactive things that they hate doing and leave them really burnt out and frustrated, the business is not going to grow as much, right? And so one of the most important elements of a company for an operator to optimize is the founder highlighting the zones of genius, mitigating the potential consequences that come from that zone of genius, and making sure that the CEO is the most effective asset for their own company.
Yep, exactly. So the other thing that pops to mind there and talking about that is people, team.
Yes.
So how important do you see the team in the operations process? And if you see a problem, how do you fix it?
Great question. And this is my kind of unique operational philosophy, but I think that the team are the number one most important resource to be optimized for within the business, right? That fourth category is human potential. Your team has all of this energy, all of this creativity, all of this drive, all of this work ethic. Are they bringing that to your business or not? Are they showing up as proactive, resourceful problem solvers? Or are they showing up as reactive B and C players that are coming to you with the same questions every single day? Same people, same amount of human potential. It's just a matter of whether they're bringing it into your business to drive it forward or not. Yep. And so I put people at the center as the very first step in my operations methodology. The people create the process, and then processes create profit. But it has to happen people first. And there's a set of systems and infrastructure that you can put in place to maximize human performance, and then use that to convert it into systems, processes, efficiencies, these sorts of things.
Cool. So what do you see is one of the best ways to motivate your team members? That could include things like, for example, does the company have a vision that they're buying into, for example? Tell us a bit about that, how to keep teams motivated so they're doing the process as well.
Totally. So the resource, if you're interested in this topic, that I would direct you towards is the book Drive by Dan Pink. Yep. And he essentially talks about the difference between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation, right? Extrinsic motivation is I will give you a pay raise if you do a great job, and I will fire you if you do a bad job, right? These are external factors that are influencing me and my behavior and my motivation. All of the data shows extrinsic motivation is a fraction as effective as intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivators also include pay, right? Everybody's like, well, either I can't afford A players, or if I want A players, I have to pay people more. Turns out increasing somebody's pay is not going to be a great way of actually increasing their motivation, their productivity, their buy-in. The 3 intrinsic motivators, you asked how to get the highest levels of performance. You systemize the intrinsic motivators across the team and across the business. The 3 intrinsic motivators are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So you hit on the third one, purpose, which is, does my work matter? Am I a part of something bigger than myself? Do I care? Do I just care about my team and the people I am serving and the work that I do in the world? That is incredibly motivating. And so that's why companies create things like vision and mission and core values, right? These are tools that help us unlock purpose within our team and get the motivational benefits. The second one is mastery. This is growth for the sake of growth. Do your people, and this is especially true for more recent generations of workers, right? Millennials and Gen Z, do they see the opportunity for growth? Do they have the ability to grow with your business? If they don't see that for themselves, then they have nothing to work towards.
Yep.
And the first one is autonomy. Do they have freedom, flexibility, agency? Do they have the ability? This is where we saw like the Great Resignation, when businesses tried to force their people back into the office for no reason whatsoever, and everybody quit because they're like, don't tell me what to do. I want to have control over my life. That is important to me, right? Mm. So are you creating these things systematically across your business? Autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Yep. I totally agree with you. And I think operating from a space where you're driven internally, intrinsically.
Yes.
And that comes down to the question like, why am I here?
Yes.
Some really existential big questions.
Yes.
And we don't talk enough about these big questions either, both right. of ourselves and also of our team and our friends and family.
Absolutely.
We're about to launch a new website blog that is just going to be my personal fun place, but I'm calling it Unsaid.
Mm.
So it's about basically all the things that are unsaid all the time, but that's very important. It's very important that we understand what they are, because we don't have these deep conversations. And I do love to go to dinner parties and ask very simple things like, what brings you joy? In other words, what brings you true happiness? And wrapped around that are questions like, okay, so I've got enough money now. I'm either retiring or I'm sold my business. What do I do next? And what would I want to do if I had all the money in the world and didn't need to worry about anything financially? What would I do? Because everybody go, well, I'm going to travel the world. Well, that's okay for a while. And you lived in a van for 2.5 years.
Right.
So did you have an existential crisis in the van on the travel bit?
I think I got tired of the stress, the constant problem solving. I think when it came time to start my own business, I did realize the need for and the importance of routine, or not even routine, but just stability, right? If I've got finite decisions that I can make every day and finite energy to put towards this company, if that energy is instead being distributed across, where do I sleep? Where do I eat? Where do I get water? Like these basic human needs, it's just inefficient. It's energy being allocated towards problem solving that doesn't need to happen and could be allocated towards the business. Now that the business is up, running, I have a team, I have my operations, I am back traveling again. I was rafting the Grand Canyon for 3 weeks last year, and I was totally offline and out of service. And my company and my team did great, right? So for me, it is, to your point about enjoying the process, I really believe in something that I call work-life harmony. I don't like work-life balance. I think balance implies that these are opposite ends of a spectrum. And to get more of one means less than of the other, versus harmony is two things that work together and feed each other, and each is greater as a result for working with the other. And for me, work-life harmony means the flexibility to raft the Grand Canyon, which is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, on 2 weeks' notice, because that's when the cancellation permit came in and that's when the opportunity presents itself, right? Like, success to me is the ability to say yes to that opportunity. And so long as I am running my business and growing my business in such a way that I always have that autonomy, that flexibility, and that ability to like enjoy life's richest experiences as fully as possible, then I'm enjoying the process. And the process can take as long as it needs to because I'm enjoying every single step of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the term work-life harmony. I've made a note of it. I think it's great. Work-life balance means that they're both, you've got to be 50-50.
Like a tug of war.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be. So work-life balance could be that you're doing exactly what you love doing, good at doing. That's your genius. That's your superpower. And you might spend 14 hours a day doing that. So, but I have asked people, I'm going to ask you too. I asked 2 questions at the end for every guest. Number 1, what brings you deep joy? In other words, what would you do if you didn't get paid for it and had enough money to live off? And what next one is, what challenges provided the biggest learning for you? So we're going to wrap this up at the end, but
I'll think on that.
Yeah, think on that. So I'll let you cogitate, let that
perfect
percolate. So just a little bit, just to wrap it up in terms of what you do, how do you engage with people in terms of, do you basically sit down with them, do a Zoom call, collect data, hand them a checklist? Okay. How do you engage with your customers? I'd be interested to know, and other people I'm sure would like to know.
Yeah, totally. So I spoke a little bit about our OptInspection process. Essentially what it is a company-wide audit. We sit down with the founder, we get clear on their goals, personal and professional, but then we go away for the next week and we are essentially a fly on the wall in their business, observing how they are currently doing things. And then we present what we call our ops report, our 12-month roadmap that says, you told us, Mr. Founder, that you wanted to be here. Well, here's all the bottlenecks currently stalling your growth and holding you back from that. And here's all the bottlenecks that you're going to encounter as you grow towards your company goals. You tell us you want to double in size. We've worked with many companies that are double your size. We know what the operations need to look like at that stage of growth. So here's all the bottlenecks you are going to encounter and all the systems you need to build in order to successfully scale to that point. So that's where we start, is we're mapping out what the next 12 months of operational scalability and growth look like. We're giving them the step-by-step roadmap to get there. And then we say, cool, so who is your operator that we can then hand this to, right? And we are interviewing their team as part of this audit, and we're identifying that level 3 thinker. I can't tell you how many times we've come into a client's business and we found an account manager or an executive assistant or a project manager who has amazing operational talent. They've never called it that. The CEO had no idea. And we just let them know, hey, did you know that this person could be an amazing operator if you chose to up-level them in that direction and give them that training? Oftentimes they'll say yes, and we'll plug that person into our coaching programs. Or they'll have an ops manager or a head of operations that has knowledge and skill gaps, and we'll need to close those gaps in order to double the size of the business, right? In this case. And so we can either coach up the operator that is already in-house, or if we don't find that person, or if they don't want to invest in that person, we also have recruitment services to bring that operator in so that they can plug one way or another. We're plugging that operational gap so the operator can be the person to implement the systems, the meetings, the team, the structure required to scale the company towards their goals.
Awesome. So in terms of that, you either so you provide a roadmap after doing an audit effectively, is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
And you can provide other services as needed after that.
Correct. Yep. And we always custom build those proposals of, here are your problems. Here's the best way we could support you as cost effectively as possible. You get to decide whether you want to work with us or not.
So what's your perfect profile for your customer, your target audience?
Yeah. Who we do our absolute best work for are companies that are anywhere between the mid-6 to mid-7-figure run rate in US dollars, right? So they have a core product. They have a basic team. They know how to sell that product. They know how to fulfill on it. They have the basic building blocks of the business. But now as they are trying to scale it up, the CEO, who has historically been the person that moves everything forward, is suddenly trapped in the weeds, spending more and more time working in the business, not on it, and feeling more and more reactive. So that founder who's got this big goal for the company and for themselves, but are finding themselves stuck and unable to reach it, those are the people we are able to do amazing work with and amazing work for by either finding or training their operator so the operator can turn around and unlock the CEO. The CEOs who work with us, it's 60 minutes a month for them to achieve and receive the transformation. because all of the work is done through their operator, so they can spend all their time living in their zone of genius and doing what they do best.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Last two questions, which I've given you a little time to percolate on. If you had all the money in the world, what would you do each day that would bring you deep joy, and you would do it without getting paid for it?
Yeah. I would probably make all of my services free, and I would continue to do exactly what I do today. I would hire a bigger team so we can reach more people, and I would lower the barrier to entry for working with us so that more people could find the information that unlocks themselves and their vision and their impact. Like, I really, maybe that sounds facetious, but I genuinely love what I do, Jeff. It was hard for me to start my own business. I didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I did this because it is the work that I feel called to do in the world. And if money was no object, I would still show up and do exactly what I do. I would just do it at a bigger scale, and I would make it available to more people. And we're trying to do that now, right? Like, we've given away essentially 20% of our revenue in the form of scholarships and discounts so that we're able to make our work more accessible. But I would just double down on that and do it for everyone.
Well, to me, it sounds like you're very much on purpose. And as the Japanese say, you've discovered your ikigai.
Yeah. Yeah. At least for this chapter of my life, I find this to be fulfilling work.
Well, I think the reality is that as humans, it does change over time in different stages of life. So, and that's what I think people need to realize is that your life purpose is not necessarily set in stone. It will evolve. I almost guarantee that. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
What is some of the biggest challenge or the challenge that you've learned the most from, and what was that learning?
So there are a couple of moments that stand out to me. The first one was the failure that inspired me to get into business in the first place, which is right after college, I joined an international mediation company. I believed in this company so hard. I loved them, everything about them. And within 12 months, they went bankrupt and the entire company exploded. And it was a really important failure in my life because it taught me that if I ever want to have a good idea that I believe is going to change the world one day, having the idea is not enough. You have to understand the rules of business. You have to understand how to build an economically sustainable vehicle around that idea in order for it to ever come into the world and reach the number of people that you want it to reach. And so up until then, I had a lot of limiting beliefs about business, a lot of limiting beliefs around money and capitalism and all of these sorts of things. Nice. But that failure reset and made me humble enough to recognize that actually I didn't know anything about business. And if I ever wanted to make a positive impact through business in my life, I needed to learn the rules of this game. That was right around the time that I met the guy that I moved into the van with, and that sent me and my life down a totally different trajectory that I don't think would have happened if that company had continued to be successful and I had pursued that track of, international mediation and that work.
Fantastic. I think people, especially in Western culture, need to see failure not as a problem, but to see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, 100%.
In other words, it's an opportunity to learn. And I think it's a learning opportunity. And if you change that mindset, then you don't necessarily welcome it, but you maybe embrace it and going, what can I learn from this?
Yes. Rather I've actually really internalized that and codified that within my own business. One of our core values is own your opportunities. And it's exactly what you just said, right? When something goes wrong, whether it's me, my team member, whatever, when something goes wrong, you lose the second you say, oh, it was his fault. The second you point a finger and you externalize the blame, you have lost because you can't control him. You can't control anybody other than yourself. Yep. And so when you say, this problem, this is their problem, I had nothing to do with it, you've robbed yourself of the opportunity to learn and grow from that. Exactly. Because the only time you have that opportunity is if you take ownership for it. And so that radical ownership is a really important core belief of mine now, especially as an entrepreneur. And it's one that I hold my team accountable to. And I always tell them, I don't care that you mess up. In fact, I expect you to mess up because it means you're innovating, you're trying things, and not everything is going to work out.
Yep.
But when you mess up, there is only one right answer. And that is, here's what happened. Here's how I contributed to it. here's what I've learned, and here's what I will do differently next time.
Yep.
And in that way, failure becomes ROI positive. It doesn't even matter, like if we lose a client or lose a sale because of that mistake, so long as you learn from it, you will more than make up for the cost of the mistake with the improvements that you're making to yourself and to the business.
Yeah. And I think that's fantastic. And that attitude, mindset is very important to entrepreneurs and for people generally in life.
And it's very important to your team, right? Like if your team feels like they can't fail because they perceive you as never failing, then they will still fail, but they just won't tell you about it. They will sweep it under the rug. They will blame someone else. You will be robbing your team and your company of the potential learning there. And you're probably going to be slowing down the whole process to begin with, because everybody's too busy pointing fingers versus learning from it and moving on.
Yeah. Fantastic. Jhana, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
It was great to hear, look under the hood of what led you to where you are today. And
thank you for having me on. It was fun to share.
Yeah, and thank you very much for your insights as well. It's been great to chat, and never know, I might bump into you in Salt Lake City or in the Grand Canyon, or maybe in Yosemite.
You never know. You never know. I might just appear in Australia tomorrow. You never know with me, Jeff.
Well, we've got some great adventures here. So, all right, Jhana, thank you very much, and look forward to catching up in real life, as they say. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.